So if Japan's the best, why did you go to Korea?
Yes, legally speaking, I had zero protection, and for me and my family.
How do you enable the experts take charge of, I guess, their department?
And I think also it depends on the.
Very excited for this conversation because there's so many ways we could take it. And I want to start with reading your LinkedIn because it's the craziest LinkedIn I've seen in games. So we have Managing Director, Vice President at Gameloft Japan, Managing Director of Blizzard Korea, Consultant to Bethesda, Managing Director of Huuuge Games, a mobile gaming company, then pivot to Head of International Operations at Storytel, an audiobook company, and now you're the founder of Ace Consulting Group, where you coach gaming businesses and businesses in general. An incredible rap sheet. So my question is, when you're at a party, what do you introduce yourself as?
Just as myself, it's just as Alexis. I think that at the end of the day, what you can see with my profile and on my LinkedIn is someone who had a very large experience, but that was building years after years, and it was not coming like just in 1 or 2 years. It's 25 years that you just sum up in few bullet points. So this is something that we can go through, but it takes some time, basically.
For sure. Like, there's so many things you can do. So I think I'm Alexis, is the only way we can actually make it consistent.
You need to be also humble, because it's basically you are what you are, and what is the most important is your personality, and what you have accomplished is important, but maybe the most important is what you will accomplish in the future.
Very good point. So there's a lot of places we could take this. So with this conversation, because there's so many things we can get into, I thought it'd be useful for everyone listening at home. We would kind of dive in to the different chapters of your career. So when you first started, the first couple years, kind of the 2 to 10 years of your career, like the more mid-level, and then when you went to super senior, and now you've become ultimately like a consultant. So I'd like to get advice for every type of person in the games industry today. So let's start at the beginning. So the role you had before Gameloft got you the role at Gameloft. So could you tell us how the market researcher role kind of shaped your career?
Yeah, so basically, as you can hear, I'm French. So we had a system before in France is that when you finish your studies, you have to do a military service, and there was one part of it where you can do your military service working for a French company abroad, and this is how I ended up in the France Telecom Group. And myself, I had a very big passion for Japan. I wanted to live there. I wanted to work there since I was a child. So basically, I was selecting some company over there. So I went to France Telecom Group. And then from there, because I was so passionate about all the game industry, and it was at that time, it was the arrival of the Dreamcast, of the PlayStation 2. I became kind of very popular internally because each time someone had a question about a console, gaming, or whatever, all the heads were turning to me. So if you remember, Dreamcast was the first connected console. That was the first one. And then after there was the PlayStation with the PlayStation modem. And at that time, in France Telecom, everyone was searching a kind of smart box device, something to enter, the room. And these devices became extremely interesting for the R&D and for the business center of France Telecom Group. So they needed to have someone to talk to these people. And at a very young age, I had the chance basically to negotiate and to meet with very high level people, either in SEGA or in PlayStation, especially. And I was very lucky when I was 23 years old. I was basically almost every day in the in the office of the president of SEGA. So I was very blessed in that, and I met also very high level people of Sony and Sony PlayStation. And from that, basically, I was headhunted by one of the subsidiary of France Telecom, and they were doing basically development and publishing, and they wanted to have someone acting as a country manager over there to do some licensing in and out. And basically, this is what I did. So I jumped in. I said, "Wow, I can buy and I can sell games. This is everything I like. I need to visit the studios. I need to visit the different publishers." So I jumped into the bandwagon on this one, and we didn't have AAA titles. So basically, we had like AA titles, but I became kind of legendary because it was very French-oriented content. But I sold everything in Japan, everything. So all the titles, more than 50 titles, and I was buying also few PS2 titles, especially the Tecmo titles. I was buying like Project Zero, like Rigar, all these kind of games on PS2. I was buying for the European market, especially, and basically this is I was connecting with everyone at that time. I was negotiating with Capcom. I bought Street Fighter, the first version for the mobile. At that time, it was still WAP. And this is basically because I was in a career, because I was so much into game, because I had so many connection that one day I was contacted by the managing director of Ubisoft. It was the parent company of Gameloft at that time. And basically, they asked me, "Are you interested in working in Gameloft?" I said,
Wow.
"That's it. Beginning of a big adventure."
Yeah, massive adventure. So, a couple of things I want to touch on there. You mentioned being in the office almost every day with the president of Sega, right?
Yes, for a project like for more than 6 months, yes. It was a very big project, yes.
Tell me about that. What is it like to be in the room with someone like that, especially at a young age?
Yes, so of course, at the beginning, it's you are in between, like you are super excited every day, and it was for me, it was like a dream come true. I mean, I was so well known in Sega at that time. I was even not entering like the visitors. I was just entering like the employees, like from the back, of the building. But you are every day excited. In fact, I didn't want to go to my desk anymore. I just wanted to find a way, a good reason to go to Sega to visit them. They had a fantastic building at that time. And what was, I learned a lot. I was very lucky to meet many good people around me. And they were acting as a kind of a mentor. But I would say that what really impressed me with, at that time, the president of Sega is how much humble he was. That was extremely impressive to me. He was the guy that basically he was the creator of the Sega Master System. He created the Mega Drive CD. He created the Saturn. So basically, he was responsible of all the different piece of hardware that I loved when I was a kid. Everything. So for me, he was like meeting a legend. But basically, he was so humble, and he was saying something also struck me. He told me, "I never planned to become basically the CEO of Sega. It's basically I inherited because at that time Sega was acquired by a bigger company called CSK, and the chairman of CSK was a very old guy. I could meet him also. Very impressive guy. He created an empire of $30 billion. And this guy said, for Sega, what we need as a CEO is the guy who loves the most Sega. And it was this guy. And his name was, I mean, probably is still alive. His name is Hideki Sato. And he was a fantastic person. So, of course, after, there was all the problem because of the Dreamcast failure. But I can tell you, as a human being, as a manager, as someone who love and respect video game, I couldn't start higher than that in my career. I was so lucky.
What did you learn from him when it came to like managing people?
I think that basically you should always work with passion. It's like if there is something that you can learn from it is if you have a real passion, basically it will bring you very far from where you are today. It can lead you very quickly to anywhere worldwide. There is like the 6 different degrees that you can meet someone who knows someone, etc. So that's exactly the way. And yes, you need to have a little bit of luck, but also to jump on the right project. The second thing is to be very humble. And third thing is that even if you are, I would say, in a very high status position, you should not dismiss the other people that you are meeting. You should always take very seriously everyone, whatever is their age and whatever is their role, because they can have something very interesting to say. And of course, the fact that the guy was humble, probably it's coming from the fact, the root that is Japanese, and Japanese in general are very humble people. So he's not the only one, but for me that was striking because I could see the difference from the culture I was coming from and basically the people I was meeting in Japan at that time. And you would be surprised. In fact, you in my career, I have found more people at I would say lower stage in their career being arrogant than very important people. It's, most of the time, the very important people are very humble because they know how they went from the beginning of their career to the end of their career, and basically they do not take it for granted, and they are very respectful of others because they know it's not easy. So you always, when you are at a later stage in your career, what you find in, I would say, younger people is yourself when you were young, and this is what you like. And that's why myself, I always like to see people who are passionate, people who really enjoy what they are doing, and people who are ambitious and people who want to succeed. I really enjoy myself working with this kind of personality trait because that was always the way I was.
Yeah. When I'm reflecting on my time in agency recruitment, I always noticed the people that ended up getting the jobs or were always booked as a contractor. That is one thing they always had, was passion. And to be fair, I say very close second is that humility. You could be the best developer in the world, but if you're not passionate or you're not humble, or you don't come across as someone who's willing to learn, even if you've kind of done it all, I think that is such a big mistake, so to speak. Like if you aren't humble in yourself with your results. Like I have this one example where the candidate didn't have the best experience. It wasn't practical in a gaming studio, but they had so many side projects and the passion was, you could feel it on the video call. They ended up getting the job and they did incredible. He wouldn't have got that job without the passion, and they could have hired someone with more experience. This was at a mobile gaming studio, but they didn't, and it's because the passion came through. So I just really want to second the passion part. It's so important.
And it also makes you understand that you need to know your place. Is whatever is your position in life, wherever you are, whatever the stage, you never know what will happen. You never know what you will experience. So this is, you meet humble people because it has been a humbling experience for themselves, and basically you will go through exactly the same experience in your life. At that time this guy was the CEO of Sega, but few years after he was not anymore. After the Dreamcast stopped and they stopped doing hardware. So basically this is just some kind of phase, but basically he will never lose my respect. This is what he has won, and this is something very important. And the second thing is that whatever is your position, even if you are managing director, founder, super successful, is like everything is a kind of subjective. You can be someone very important in the gaming industry, but gaming industry is not everything worldwide. I mean, how do you compare the best CEO in the gaming industry compared to Elon Musk, for example? Are you going to space, or what are you doing exactly? What are you contributing? So you need to put yourself into perspective. That's extremely important.
I felt like you used the word luck a lot, but there's probably a reason you were in the role where you were working with these kind of high influence people. I'm guessing likability is a big part of this. So I was just wondering, like, I have a question here. So when you're hiring, is likability, I feel like, is a big factor, but how do we break that down? Like, why do you think there are people who are just more likable than not?
Hmm. Good point. I think that it's not just you are likable because you are likable. It's because basically you are showing the sign that makes you likable. Like, for example, if you can create a trust, a kind of bond, and that's kind of important. If you are also showing some sign that you are definitely interested in what you are doing. When I was talking about the passion, I wanted to say also at that time that when people are passionate about what they are doing, they will see that their eyes, they are just shining. You know, it's completely different. You know, there is a kind of a spark in their eyes that they love what they are doing, and they are so passionate. You cannot stop them to talk about it and what they are saying, and that creates a kind of connection. And also, what is very important is to see what people are interested in. So I think that when you are meeting someone who is really much into something, you should try also to try to dig is what the person knows about it, why they are telling you something, and what they are trying to show. For me, at the end of the day, you know, you have always the hard skill and the soft skill, right? And basically, the hard skill, let's say you receive 500 resume, basically you can make like, okay, with the filters you can get, or you just browse by yourself, you will get all the guys, okay, I need this kind of level of education, this kind of training or whatever is like experience in, I don't know, marketing, coding, and etc., etc. But at the end of the day, what will make the difference is the personality. Does this person will fit the company culture, the company objectives? Will this person, do you think this person will work well with the rest of the group? And of course, it really depends. So I will say that since the COVID, things have changed a little bit because basically the mechanics and the dynamics of the team group has changed a little bit because there are much more people working either hybrid, either remote. But basically, this is what is important. Myself, I always like to meet people face to face because you can really much better connect with the person. Even if you are just having a drink with someone, you can know so much more about the person than just the resume. It's just like, and to make people talk about what they like, what is their hobbies, and why they applied, and etc. This is what is important because you can connect the dot. You can see if people are very smart. You can see also if people are passionate. You can see if people are kind of logical, and also if their personality will fit what you need.
Flipping it to the candidate now, would you argue that if you put yourself in a situation where you can meet the studio in person, would you argue that is a really key part of, like, I guess, the job seeking process? Because right now people may be focusing on the remote side. I'm wondering, because you mentioned being in person is so important to you, is it also important for the person looking for the job?
No, I don't think so. I think that since the COVID, things have changed. Basically, the way of working has changed. I think it's still important, basically, to meet people face to face, but you do not need to do it at the interview stage or at the beginning. You can meet people after, you know, when there is a big event of the company. And I think also it has to work with trust. I think that everyone worldwide took a lesson with the COVID. You know, there was like, can we work remotely? Can the world work remotely? And basically, we proved it's possible because it's based on trust. And I think that, of course, there were some many, I will say, many minus things during the COVID, but also some very good points. Is that basically, especially for the manager, they understood that they can trust their team to work remotely. They also, for many managers, learned that basically they do not need to do micromanagement. It's basically you can let the people work. Some people prefer to work super early morning. I have met many people like that. Some people prefer to work late at night. As long as the job is done, it's good. So I think it was not so much a learning for the, I would say, for the employees, but that was definitely much more a learning for the managers.
If that's the case, I wonder, why do you see the big push now of people bringing people back to the office, you think, especially from the big companies?
Well, because there is right now, I mean, if we are talking about the gaming industry, it's a little, there is a kind of there is a little bit a kind of crisis, economic crisis that all the studios are facing. And of course, when there is more pressure, especially this is a financial pressure right now, there is always like more pressure to deliver result equals that you want to create the pressure on the people. So basically telling them we are all in the same room and we are all fighting for it and we need to deliver and we need to have the deadline and we need to meet them and that's it. And there is some milestone and it's very, very important. And I think it's, in a way, it can be a good thing to meet and to be in the office. But at the same time, I think that, uh, again, the companies are not very logical, I think. During the COVID, they were saying, okay, everyone is working remotely. It was more or less working well, I would say. Of course, it was complicated at the beginning, especially for the big studios when you need to manage all the different tools and everything. But it was done. But then after saying everyone needs to come back, otherwise you will be fired, that I think that's completely wrong. It's going into exactly the opposite. So I think that one extreme or the other extreme are never good.
Yeah. Seems to me like a bit short sighted potentially, or potentially like a reason to like reduce headcount. I wonder if that's a reason sometimes. But like you said, it's different for different studios. Like I think if you're a very, very large studio, it is hard to manage remotely, but from what I understand, it's not impossible.
You know, it's probably this is something that we will discuss more later into the podcast. But for me, that I will say this is one of the issues in the gaming industry is that this industry was always lacking some kind of sense of maturity, and this is something that you could say, let's say, like 20 or 30 years ago, because it was still young. But now we have an industry that is like more or less, let's say, 50 years old, and it's not like it's gaining some maturity. It's like it's rebooting itself. You know, like every few years it's coming back. So you have the publishers and the studios, they are recruiting by hundreds or thousands of people and then they fire everyone. You need to work remotely, but then after you have to come back. And that's one of the reasons, in fact, of why I was creating Ace Consulting to try to help publishers and developers basically to raise their awareness about the decision making. Is basically to get some guidance into what is the good decision for the company and not to be so much short-sighted, short-term view in your decision. I think this it has been always this problem in the industry, and it was okay before. It was smaller, but now we have a $200 billion industry. We have more people than ever, and we have seen since the beginning of the year tremendous number of people that have been laid off, and this is something that could have been prevented. So I think this is a big problem of the industry, and one day or I don't know when exactly, we will need to move from that stage to have the right management, the right skill, the right decision making. We cannot continue that way. That's not fair for the people. That's not basically fair for all the families around the people, and it's definitely not good business practice. It's not good management either, I will say.
Couldn't agree more. And it sounds like there's a solution. Like the consulting group, from my understanding, you're helping those people like hopefully get that maturity up. And I want to dig deep on the reasons, but before I do that, I want to ask for Gameloft. So that was your first kind of massive company where you were like managing over 100 people. So I wanted to ask you, what did you learn from managing over 100 people that you wish you knew when you first started?
I will say that there every day is different. Every day there are some problems that needs to be fixed, and that probably um, you should take it like, let's say, less by heart. And basically, you can sometimes you can feel with the stress a little bit burnout. So you need to, I think that you need to relax and basically to understand that there is the long term. And myself, especially because I was young at that time, every day was like the new fight. There is always something new, and you are trying your best. But I think that in retrospectively, with my close to 14 years in Gameloft, there are many things that I would have done differently. And at the same time, I would say this is growing pains. When people ask me how do you become a managing director, in fact, it's not like just I applied to the position. It was not like that. I was recruited to manage the business for Gameloft. At that time, we didn't know if we will do basically licensing out of Gameloft IPs or games, or basically if we will become a publisher in Japan. And I was alone. I started alone. So it's not like suddenly you arrive, there is 100 people. That came later on. I was growing one, and then after 6 months we became two. 6 months again we were five, and then suddenly we became 25, then 50, then 100, then 150, until we became the largest foreign game developer and publisher in Japan. But it took like 3 to 4 years to arrive at that state, and it was also due to the way that the mobile industry was organized, or how it was different in Japan compared to Western countries. And there are many different reasons. But myself, when people ask me, for example, how do you define yourself? I always say I am a business development manager by heart. I was doing licensing many, many times. I was doing business in many different ways. And at the same time, I became managing director. And this is a position that I love as a general manager, because I like to have holistic view of what's happening in a company, and I like to try to help the different department and division to improve themselves. I can see the big picture, and this is something that I think that I'm very good at. Sorry, this is not so humble, but I have done it for 20 years. This is something I feel very, very confident. So it's the position of managing director is something that is growing on you, but there is also growing pains. And the growing pains, there you will make multiple mistakes that you will learn from your mistake little by little.
You're not trained on how to manage 50, 100, 150 people. I feel like you learn that on the job. So you mentioned mistakes there. I was wondering if someone's going through that themselves, like what's the difference of managing 20 people versus 150 people? And how, like, when did you feel like you got the skills? Like, what was the kind of, was there like a turning point? Is there like a moment where you realized, whoa, these, I need to change the way I'm managing?
I think that when basically when you are in a very flat organization, again that was a different time. But when you are in a very flat organization, you are the boss and you have 20 people. Basically, you have to manage everyone one by one almost, and this is much more demanding. And basically, you feel more the pressure. I think that when you have a company that is starting to be organized, growing, and especially I would say in my case, when we reached 50 people in Japan, it became easier in the sense that we were organizing ourselves. So I had someone to help me for the admin, someone for legal, someone for the production, and after you recruit some producers. So you get more organized, so you are working with your leads. This is what is important. And I would say that what is very important when you are managing a company is that your leads are extremely important people you surround yourself with. I would say you need to consider them as of course they are your colleagues, but collaborators, partners. It's always good to consider them as partner, they are the one that will make the company run. You are here to guide the company, to give a kind of vision and to structure the company and to take the right decision. But eventually, you will have some people who will do, I will say, the job by themselves. So you recruit people who are experts in their field. It's changing the dynamic a little bit, and I prefer when the company are very well organized. It's much easier to work, I think. And also myself, I'm a generalist. So when you are working with experts as a generalist, you learn so much from them.
How do you enable the experts to get on with it and like really like take charge of, I guess, their department? Like, how do you give them that flexibility so they don't feel like they have to come to you all the time? Because you mentioned well organized. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so different practices, and I think also it depends on the company's company culture. When you have the full freedom, for example, myself, what I was doing is that at the beginning of the week, we were doing the weekly meeting, and on the Monday, and basically is we are reviewing what everyone will need to do, and basically we are constantly meeting on the Monday. So then after I give the freedom to people, they know what they have to do in the short term, mid-term, long term. Myself, I have always worked in layers. So I think this is important. Whatever is your project, it can be your company or your personal project in life. I think it's important to have the view of what I'm doing this week, what I'm doing in this quarter, what I'm doing in this year, and the very long-term vision in the game industry is 3 years time. But basically, you need to build basically your work by layers, and then after you give the freedom. Myself, I don't want to be on the back of people and checking everything they are doing, but basically, I will ask usually on the Friday some reporting, and they can deliver their reporting. And so there is no, except the EOD, and mention, there is no particular stress for them, especially when it is on a Friday. If they want to complete it by 3 p.m. or 5 p.m. or 7 p.m., that's all good for me, because then after the next Monday, we can discuss what has been done the past week, what was done correctly, not correctly, what needs to be improved, what were the blockers, and what needs to be done for this week. But at the same time, very important for me is that, especially in Japan, I was not in a closed office myself. I was very in a Japanese way with everyone else. It was like an open office, and I was with everyone else. So basically, when there is a question, people can just come and ask me directly. And for me, this is something that was very important, because you do not want to cut yourself from your team. It's extremely important also to know for the people that if there is an issue, they do not have to wait for 1 week to come back at you, and they can just come to you and discuss openly, and very important that it's not rigid. So I do not want to say, okay, you want to talk to me, you book a time, we go to a meeting room, and this is very formal. For me, that's exactly the opposite. It should be informal, so there will be more openness, and we can really understand as a manager what is the issue and how to fix it, at least how to help the people.
The point you made about being kind of available all the time, do you how do you recreate that in a remote context? I find that difficult. How would you recreate that? Try to keep it as low friction as possible.
I would say that fortunately there were some very good tools that were invented, and one of them, I don't know if we can give name. Yeah, no problem to name some tools, but I think that, for example, Slack is a very very useful tool, extremely useful when you are working in teams and when you are working remotely, because basically you have a huddle, you can connect to people right away, make a short video, audios, and you can just ping people very, very quickly. It's very well made. You have the different thread, the different group. You have the formal, the informal. So I think you can keep this kind of dynamic of a company with specific tools.
Yeah. And one thing I'd say on the Slack, because I get some complaints sometimes from like studio leaders who say, "Oh, we don't like Slack because they tend to silo conversations sometimes. People start having conversations like in private like they would usually do in an open setting." And I wonder, like, having those open communication channels to be public rather than just one to one, especially when like people are asking each other help. So in a remote setting, do you advise this communication to be like public so everyone can kind of see what everyone is talking about?
Well, that's your choice. You decide if the channel is locked or it's not locked, and if it is formal or informal. So I think that they are providing everything. I think that some people, in a group, in a team, there are always some chit chatters. There is always some people who have like very good ear. They like to listen what's happening on the background, but I will say that not all the discussion, not all the conversation needs to be shared or needs to be known to everyone. So that's the decision of the people if they want to share or not to share. I think the fact that there is a little bit, in all the different companies I have worked and there was a Slack, there is always a room about like cat lovers, dog lovers, and etc. And the kind of a party that we can do on the Friday between colleagues. I think that for me, this is the way in a very remote situation to keep a little bit the coffee machine talk. Like people are meeting, in the for example at lunch in the cantina or anything like that, and it's a good way to keep it. But I mean, there is no perfect situation, and what you are saying right now is coming back to why some of the manager prefer to ask people to come back to the office. And most of the manager or the, let's say, the CEOs asking people to come back, they know that from the COVID era there is no turning back. So usually they are trying to make it like halfway, like you can come, you have to come back, but at least 2 days a week out of the 5 days. And if people were relocating, that's a big issue, definitely. But if you were in the same city, I think that's okay. And I think also it can be fair to keep this dynamic, to have people meet face to face and to exchange, basically. I think for me, the biggest problem of, I would say, of Slack or remote work is that there is a tendency for everyone to fill out basically their schedule with meeting like that. And basically everyone is jumping from one meeting to another. So basically sometimes the conversation is kind of, the talk is too long, and sometimes it's too short to what we would like to discuss. Sorry, I have to jump into another call. And that's another problem like that. And it will not happen if it was a face to face. It's there will be more flexibility around it, especially if it is very important project.
I want to take a pivot now. So at Gameloft, you negotiated a lot of licenses. You negotiated with Nintendo, Sony. What did you learn about negotiating while doing that at Gameloft?
Yes, so I was doing the first game that I was licensing out for Gameloft was it was before we became a publisher. It was to a company that was called Kemco, and basically I licensed out Prince of Persia, the original one, and the Sands of Time. And after that, we had a very famous IP in Gameloft called Asphalt, and basically I was selling the rights to Konami for the DS, 3DS, PSP, PS Vita version, and basically it takes a lot of discussion. This is what I would say, and I think that the most important is that when you are negotiating, you are always trying to create a win-win situation. It's like, as long as you understand that both sides needs to win something, it should go well. There will be a lot of back and forth because there is always you need to report to your boss. Basically, can I sign this deal? Is this amount is okay? You need to check the legal side of it. But except from that, I think you need to keep the dynamic of the negotiation with your counterpart and to always be open. You never say, I disagree with you. I think this is what is important. You can say that I do not see things the same way as you. I'm not sure that basically my company would approve or my boss would approve, but basically you do not shut the door. Never. It's basically there is always room for negotiation, and you always leave the door open. There is no reason to close the door. Never.
Can I ask, how long do those negotiations take?
Usually it goes depending on the size of the project. If it is, for example, a mobile game, can be done in basically in 1 month usually. And if it is a little bit more complicated, like what I was doing, for example, with Konami, it was basically I think around 3 months to get it right. But basically, it was the first contract that was done on DS or 3DS because after that, the other contracts are almost like amendments. So when you are adding the PSP or the PS Vita version, you already know your counterpart. You know what are the expectations, how we deal together. We have already done the legal side of it. So it goes much faster afterwards. And there is a trust, a connection that has been created. I think for me, the most complicated one that I had was the one I did just before the end of Gameloft. We had a game that was, I think it's still on the App Store, on the Google Play Store. It's called Disney Magic Kingdom. And Disney Magic Kingdom was very difficult because I wanted to do it with a partner in Japan because such a big brand. And I went basically directly to the number one in Japan. And it's Gung Ho. So they are very famous because they were doing a Puzzle and Dragon and they were the number one mobile developer and publisher in Japan at that time. And basically, this one was complicated. Why? Because there was Gango in Japan, there was Gameloft Japan, but there was also Disney in US, their HQ, because it was a deal between Disney US and Gameloft HQ in Paris. But on top of it, there was also Disney in Japan, because Disney Japan is saying whatever happened with the Disney characters, the Disney licenses and IPs in Japan, it's our territory. We control 100%. We have more to say than the HQ on this. Disney Japan is extremely powerful company, extremely powerful company. So basically, they control everything. So it was a deal that need to be a win for 5 parts, 5 different companies, and that was so complicated. And I remember that I think it was the time of close to Christmas or the New Year, and we are saying, "Oh my God, it's 11 p.m." and we are discussing about if we are respecting Mickey ears and the characters like that. And sometimes you just say like, "We will never go to the end of this contract." It's so complicated.
So how do you stick through it? Like having to have 5 different parties. Like the reason I asked that question is when it's a short period, a month, I feel like because you know the lights at the end of the tunnel, you can keep fighting. But when it's a complicated one like that could last 3 months plus. It feels like don't you just feel like you're having the same conversation over and over again? Like how do you make sure you're actually fighting for, the pen to paper?
So you are, in fact, yes. Sometimes you have the feeling that you are just banging your head against a wall, and you have to repeat. And you also you need to try to put people who are extremely different in the same room. I remember we had once a very tense meeting between. We went to visit Disney Japan and with Gang Ho, and myself, I was the foreigner, I was the gaijin, and basically everyone liked me. I was trying to make the deal, but there was real tension between the two Japanese counterparts because Gango says, "I'm acquiring this license. I want to control it," and Disney Japan was like, you can control it as much as we want you to control it. So it's becoming a little bit a war of ego and who owns basically the IP and the franchise, especially for this game. But except from that, you have some people that are there to help you. And myself, I had my boss who was in charge of SVP of publishing. We had our CFO who was looking at the deal also. We had our legal counsel, extremely helpful. So there are different people who are here for you. You are the one you want basically to nail it because this is my responsibility. But I think this is coming back to the passion. If you are a kind of a business development guy by heart, and if you are a kind of a sales guy, if you like to succeed and to sign the deal, in that case, this is what will make go through it. And you will say, yeah, but you are losing the perspective. But don't forget that basically I was signing the Prince of Persia deal that was easier, and then after I was signing the Asphalt franchise in Japan, a little bit more complicated. I had also negotiation with Nintendo to get the dev kit, for example, of I think it was the Wii at that time. I'm not sure anymore. But basically, that the negotiation of the dev kit were very complicated. And basically, this is all together. So you are also becoming more resilient in a way to negotiate and to make a contract. This is not something that you are starting right away. You are gaining some trust, and basically, you are building your confidence. And I think that you can understand if you like it or not. For me, since I was a kid, I always love Monopoly. So it was like I always loved this game. So for me, doing business is a little bit like a Monopoly. Is like it's a kind of fun to negotiate. I always liked it. So I really like to discuss with people, and especially if you know when you enter the room what you want when you leave the room. That's extremely exciting.
Yeah. One last thing on the negotiation piece, because I also enjoy it. But when it comes to price, how do you keep the conversation around price fun? Because I feel like when price enters the room, it's like there's a new level of tension potentially, because we might have agreed everything else. Then when it comes to price, how do you keep that playful? Should you keep it playful?
I think that one way is to try to, if possible, to remove the emotion by bringing some relevant points why the cost is what it is. Is I think that what is important for the counterparts, for the company you are dealing with, is to understand that you are not trying to rob them. You are not you what you are trying is to get a fair price for everyone. They need to understand that you need to make your deal. They need to make their deal, but at the end is this is, for example, the price of the IP. In case of recruitment, for example, when when a company wants to recruit someone, let's say through a headhunter, the price is the price in the sense that when you cannot have someone that is, let's say, 20 years of experience, like if he was like 3 years experience, and vice versa, it will not work. So if you know your number, if you know the market, if you know the value of your product, the value of the franchise, how much it's sold, etc., then basically uh, it should be kind of okay. And again, always leave the door open. You should not say like this is the price, this is this, or there is no negotiation. It should not be that way. This is what you are bringing, and from there you are going into the negotiation.
Yeah, that's been a recent lesson for me where the price for that version of the product could be fixed, but that doesn't mean the price is fixed for the partnership because you could always change the terms to match the budget, always move things around. I think that's been an important lesson. And I like the point of having all the evidence because it's a different story if you just put a number out. It's like, well, that's the number. You have all the evidence you can point to. It's a different conversation. It's a bit more maturity, right?
And yeah, and there is also the result, the past result. If basically if you are proving yourself that you are providing a good product, or that basically the sales were in line, or basically the person that you were offering as a headhunter was doing a good job, then basically you are building the trust. And I think this is all based on the past experience, negotiating together if it is the same person, or based on the past result of the product. That's something that because I like all the kind of entertainment, and I really like the movie industry, also the music industry. When you look, for example, at the movie industries, and you look at the beginning of the career of actors like DiCaprio or Tom Cruise, and basically you can see that they were paid like maybe $10,000, like $100,000 max, something like that. But most of the time it was not the case. So basically their value was building up through time based on their past results. And that's what is bringing the value. I think that everyone is starting at a point. What can be a mistake is to be or to become too greedy. Like if you are becoming a little bit arrogant and you believe that you can really extract too much from the counterpart, basically you will fail in that case. So as a kind of a beacon, you need to keep in mind that you want to create and to keep a long-term relationship with your counterpart, with your client, with your customers. That's extremely important because it put everything into perspective. Having a quick win, it's if it at the expense of your counterpart, of your partner, it's the recipe for disaster in the future. So it should not be done that way.
I feel like the long term vision is the only vision that matters, right? It's the long term relationship is the only thing that matters. The short term, yeah, it's never worth it. Never worth it.
But that's my way of doing. But myself, I always, I was in a way, I would say, business-like, professionally. I was raised in Japan. I'm French, but I never worked in France. So basically, I had always as a kind of beacon, like the fact that Japanese are very humble, the fact that they are very hardworking people, the fact that they are always looking at the long term. And it's true that there are many, for example, many Western companies, especially coming from US, they come and they just want to do a quick bucks, and Japanese company listen to them, and they know that in 1 or 2 years time they will just leave. And that was a very, very big hurdle for a while, because basically Japanese companies were reluctant, for example, to give their own franchise to foreign companies. Let's say, for example, a One Piece, a Dragon Ball. I mean, you have very, very through the gaming industry story, very few cases that it was not Japanese company taking care of this franchise. Why? Because the relationship and the trust that has been created through the years with the Japanese companies is so strong, they will never, never break it for you and for quick bucks. Never. And myself, I have met them, all these people. So basically, they say that when you come and you say, "Oh, I would like to get Dragon Ball," you go to Toei, and they say, "I'm sorry, but basically we have a 50 years old relationship with Bandai, not starting from Dragon Ball, of course, but far before." And why? Because Bandai is the sponsor of the anime. And Bandai is the sponsor of the anime, but they are also doing toys. Are you doing toys? Are you sponsoring the anime? So it's like a consortium, and basically you cannot break it. So that's why quick bucks cannot enter Japan, and very few foreign companies or Western companies understand that. I would say that there are two I would say in the two US companies that have extremely well succeeded in Japan. I would say are Disney and Coca-Cola. Why? Because they understood their market, they respected the market, and they had such a long-term plan, long-term vision of what to achieve in Japan. And that's why I think what they are doing as a foreign companies, I don't know, of course, all the industries, insurance and everything, but I will say for these two, it's the the best in terms of management and the way to do business on the long term.
So if Japan's the best, why did you go to Korea?
Yes, so thank you. Very good question. Well, basically, what was happening is in 2016 there was a hostile takeover on Gameloft made by one of the French investors called Vincent Bolloré, and this person owns a lot of companies in France, including also Universal Music. He owns Vivendi, and Vivendi was doing hostile takeover on both Gameloft and Ubisoft. And basically, it was very difficult to protect both, and Gameloft was acquired. Myself, it has been more than 10 years I was in Gameloft, so I was not learning so much anymore. I was in a kind of a routine, and I consider that my time was done. I was also the president of the company, so that means that legally speaking, I had zero protection, and for me and my family. So all this together, it was preferable for me to leave at that time. I have done my time. It was the time to turn the page, and this is what I decided.
Legally speaking, you had no protection. Is that because, like, if something happened, it would have been your fault? Is that what you meant?
No, no, yeah, because when you are most of the time, so there are different wordings depending basically the language. But in Japan, when you are managing director, you are seen as the president of the company, the president of the entity. And for many countries, it's not specific to Japan, but I know the case of Japan is basically you do not have a real contract. You have a mandate, and your mandate is as valid as the company wants it to be valid. So this is something that is important. And basically, when you are in this kind of position, you need to understand it's like having your own company. You will not get unemployment benefits. So this kind of things like that. So when there was the reshuffle of the company, the management team, and everything, I just consider myself I have done my time. There was nothing more. If there was a new project coming in, but it was very blurry at that time, so it was definitely the right time to leave.
Fair enough. So you moved to Korea and an annual operating budget of over $100 million. So, from my understanding, that was a big increase from Gameloft.
In fact, more than that, it was like the P&L was basically closer to $200 million. And so it was very big. And on top of it, I would say it's not so much. I don't know why, but myself, I never had any problem with managing big budget. For me, I will say that I'm less stressed by big budget than small budget. It looks a little bit counterintuitive. And the main reason is that you are managing 10 million or 100 million, you just add basically a zero. That's it. So basically, it's not changing that much. Usually, you are more organized, you are more well surrounded by other people. And when I was in Blizzard, I had a reporting line of 11 directors. That's a lot. But basically, that means that I was very well protected. I had a very, very strong team. So that's something that is very important. You are more structured. The second thing is that you are playing with, in a way, with more money. The budget is more, but also you are managing bigger budget because you have bigger IPs. So I love, for example, the big IPs of Gameloft, like Disney Magic Kingdom or Asphalt, but you cannot compare with StarCraft, World of Warcraft, Overwatch, and or Diablo. It's not comparable. So that means these IPs are generating much more money, and basically that means that you need, in terms of marketing, in terms of PR, you need to invest much more money also.
Yeah, so I have quite a few questions about your Blizzard experience because you've done the live events, which I want to dive into, but also what you just said, like 11 directors coming into you. Like, that's a lot of directors. And then those directors have teams below them who probably have teams below them. So this feels like the Gameloft management experience, but the next level. So how was the first few days at Blizzard? How did it change? What was it like having 11 directors?
It was not instant. You do not start day one like this. So basically, at the beginning, I had my boss who was who was visiting to Korea. He was still handling basically the situation, and progressively it came to me. So I had a bigger project, and little by little, they were giving more power to exercise until they decided, okay, now you are full MD, and basically we open everything to you. I will say, especially the approval of the budget and the spending, and that was more like that. It's not instant, but I would say it's a much more demanding. Yes, it's the amount. I would say the amount of work, especially because Blizzard is based a lot on esports activities. There is no comparison. As soon as you are, of course, there is always the difference between mobile to PC, because Korea is mainly a PC business. But there is also I would say the activities, the events. I had multiple ones. So one of them was Overwatch first year anniversary, big event with 10,000 people. And the biggest one that I had the responsibility was the release of StarCraft Remastered. So it was StarCraft redone in 4K. And StarCraft is something that is very unique in Korea. So they consider it as a god game. Is the perfect game. There is no better game than this one, even if visually I prefer myself StarCraft 2, obviously. But for Korean people, what is important is the strategy, and is how the game plays. This is the most important. So when we had the StarCraft remaster, we made a very big event in Busan Beach, and basically there were more than 30,000 people. So it was like a concert. It was broadcasted on TV. There are still some few pictures on my LinkedIn that you can check, but that was like, wow. I have no words. I have no words. I'm not sure one day in my life I will live that again. It was like, I will say, probably that was kind of a peak of my career at that time. Yes, definitely. You never know what will happen, but that was so intense, so incredible, um, extraordinary, extraordinary. It changed everything.
I can imagine. I got loads of questions. So, on the event day, is there like an after party where everyone goes and parties together? Like you do that massive event, but surely you're like, "Whoa, we done it!" And then does everyone go party after? Like, what happens?
Of course, but
Of course.
this is of course there is always a party, but I would say this is a Asian party. So this is not like
What's an Asian party? What's the difference?
yeah. It's what's the difference is I would say that well, if one day you come to Berlin is basically if you do a party, you never know how it will end.
Yeah. Well, what day?
People will smash themselves, etc. You never know. So that's the beauty, I would say, of, for example, of Western world of Berlin, for example. In case of Japan or Korea, you party, but you have kind of limits. It's like we do a party for 2 hours or 3 hours. There is a limit. We drink, we have fun, we sing, we do karaoke. We basically we drink a lot of beer, etc., and etc., and shochu in Korea. But basically, you have a limit at that time. We end up, and usually you have second informal party, third informal party. This is different. It's usually smaller group. It's not official anymore, so it's a little bit different in that sense. But yes, there are some parties, and myself, it was not like the ultimate fun because, for example, when we did that, I was representing the company. So, for example, at the end of the, for example, of the esports event, I had to give the big check and to the winners with the pictures, and there was all the TVs. So you have to be careful about what you are doing, about yourself. Very important. Before doing the event in Busan, we had to go there to meet the mayor. He wanted to meet us because this is very important for them also, as it's driving, I will say, some shining element to the city. So very important. And yes, for Overwatch, this is the same. So you are kind of more careful about what you are doing, I will say, as a managing director. You need to have fun, but reasonable fun. That's it. And I had also, in some events in Korea, we had the founder of Blizzard coming, Mike Moran. So he's the boss. He's the guy. So basically, I was usually seated close to him, and basically, you will not get drunk close to the CEO and the founder of Blizzard. No, never.
No, you don't try to slip him a beer, try to network a bit more, build that relationship.
You don't. I had some very good memory when we were visiting together. I mean, with a group, PC Cafe, and we were playing Overwatch together in the same group. So with the guy who founded Blizzard, I say, wow, that's fantastic. But again, about Mike Moran, the founder of Blizzard, extremely humble guy. He has created at that time, I think it was like $2.5 billion company. Even before Activision, it was a giant, extremely humble person, extremely super nice person. Unfortunately, he has left Blizzard after with everything that was happening with Activision and etc. And then after Microsoft, but such a humble guy. So you will be surprised each time that you believe like someone important is difficult to get. In fact, someone important is usually they are super nice.
I wonder if that's the great filter. If you want to become that level, you need to be humble. So you only see, like, it might be like an over representation of humble leaders for that reason.
Let's put it that way. Either you are humble or life will humble you.
I like it. I like it. I have a couple questions there. So this is a selfish question. So you were a business development manager, and you mentioned the parties, then the unofficial after parties, and the parties after that. I found a lot of networking happens at these parties, even at the gaming conventions. So this is one for people looking to network. Just say you're trying to get a job, you're a business development manager trying to build relationships. How do you go about that well? Because you can do that in a lot of ways, and I'm sure one is better than the other. So how do you network well in those parties?
You have to come back to the passion. You need to talk about what you are doing. It's again, it's like you are going to a party first. You will have the personality, and you have some people who are more extrovert and more some people who are more introvert. But then after your personality will kick in, and especially if you are talking about your project, I think that when you are talking about parties, for example, recently there was the GDC, and then after there will be the Gamescom, etc. When you meet the people, we say, "Hey, let's hang out together," or "Please come with us," or something like that. If you know someone who knows someone, and it should be something that is coming natural. And I think that you should not try to make it a win constantly. I think that if people can feel that there is an agenda, that's basically that will not be good. You can talk about your project because it's just flowing into the conversation. It's mixing, it's merging into the conversation, but basically it should not be forced because at the end, what we say is you work hard and you play hard. Is basically you need when you enjoy, you enjoy. This is a party. This is there to basically to party. But when you are in the game industry and you know it, and basically the people from the gaming industry are always talking about games, always. There is it's 24 hours a day, right? So basically there is no ending. If you are working, let's say, I don't know, if you are working for Coca-Cola, I'm not sure that Coca-Cola people are talking about, oh, the new bottle, and like I'm not sure when they are partying.
Probably the last thing they want to talk about, right, at the party.
Exactly. But in the case of game, because we love it that much, and this is what is always bringing people back to the game industry, is the love of the game. It's literal, and it's basically we just love the video games, and basically that's it. This is like the this is what we enjoy. This is the industry we enjoy. So it's a very tough, but at the end of the day, we cannot fight ourselves. We always come back to it.
For sure. And building that relationship and the playfulness and the fun first before the agenda of the win, that seems like the key takeaway there is like you don't want to be optimizing every conversation and trying to do that. Like you want to build that relationship first.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. At the end, everyone is different, so you see how the personality are going on. So it's difficult to judge. But let's say, for example, that you have a game. It's basically if you are going to a party and you are trying to raise money and you say, oh, I have this game, I'm trying to raise, I have this game, I'm trying to raise, it will not work well. It's basically if you are saying I'm developing this game, if the other person in front of you is saying, oh, really, what kind of game are you building? It's like, oh, you are creating your own company. So this is something that should be very natural, and you do not need to have the interest of everyone. It will depend, but most of the time people want to know more about you, because it's coming back to the beginning of the discussion about how do you become likable. Is It's like, I think one way is to show the the bright side of you, is what makes you interesting, what is your passion, what is your personality. Is like, if people see that there is a spark in your eye when you are talking about this game or this game, then basically I think it will go very well.
Perfect. So before we move on to your pivot to Bethesda, where you became a consultant, you mentioned the live events there. You did that first anniversary of Overwatch. That was a massive event. I'm wondering, any lessons there on just putting on a spectacle, arranging that many people? Like, especially, I'm just thinking in the example of people putting on events for their games or even like online events, because you said this was streaming. Like, is there any big takeaway or big lesson learned there?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if it is based on the event or the ATM or the offline activities, but in the case, for example, of Blizzard, but I think it would be exactly the same for all the AAA, or it can be, let's say, Call of Duty, or it could be League of Legends, etc. I think that these companies are extremely careful about their branding. The brand is everything, and to protect the brand is basically to respect the players. So basically, the community is the thing that is the most important. The community around the game is everything for Blizzard. It's absolutely everything. So and I'm talking here only for Blizzard, so I don't know how the other companies are managing. When Blizzard at that time was managing its own IP, basically the idea was like, we are ready to do everything for the players. It doesn't have to be, I would say, profitable. There is no point of being profitable. That was a celebration day when we were doing basically the StarCraft remaster event. It's a celebration that we are doing in Korea for Overwatch, for StarCraft. That's the way that we are doing it. We are doing also big events for World of Warcraft. You need to consider that much more like a gigantic community management, or basically the most fantastic PR in the world. So that's the way that you can look at it. And I think that when you reach a certain status, certain level, this is basically what you should aim for, especially to protect your IP. And you know that everyone is saying in the industry, when you want to work with Disney, they are pain in the ass and etc. But there is a reason for that. It's because their IPs, if we take the iconic IPs like the Disney characters, like Mickey Mouse, is basically 100 years old. So of course they want to protect it, and of course you should be extremely careful the way that you display the character, the way that you show the brand, that you communicate on it. Of course, so that's kind of reasonable from them to basically to act that way. And I think that for Blizzard, there is incredible love of the employees for Blizzard. That's really something that I immensely respect. And there is an immense respect of Blizzard towards their players and their community. And this is something that when you are part of Blizzard, you are so proud.
It sounded like I guess, the definition of success wasn't profit when it was those events. It was more you doing the event to celebrate. Obviously, you're going to get PR, but it doesn't sound like you like internally they wasn't going. Okay, we're going to spend X amount to make this amount of impressions. So it sounds like this was more like let's make this the best event possible.
Mhm. Yeah, of course. After you want to have as many people as possible to talk about the event and etc. But there is also the way that, there is, especially in Korea, there is always the competition between Blizzard and Riot Games, and between League of Legends and basically at that time it was Overwatch. But each market is different. In the case of Korea, it's a market that is driven by the PC cafe. So basically, when you are playing on a PC cafe, you need to pay, and basically, the ratio, the money that you are making, depends basically on the playtime of the people. So at the time I was MD, we had basically 37% market share in Korea. So that was huge. So I would say that two companies were owning like two-thirds of the market.
Wow, that's a completely different business model. That's so cool
Completely different. Yeah.
because then you're not optimizing for copies; you're optimizing for playtime. So doing that event,
Yeah,
making such a cultural moment, that
yeah,
changes everything.
we were selling also. Of course, we were doing when we did StarCraft Remastered as compared to we were selling some hard copies, some physical copies of the game, and basically compared to the objective that I had, we sold triple. So fantastic. But basically, I would say that for Blizzard, this is not what is the most important. What is the most important is the playtime and how much of the market share you own of the playtime of the users. This is the way that you are looking at it.
Yeah, which I think comes back to the long term strategy of things. Because for quick bucks, that might not be the best strategy. But for long term, you need people playing your game. So
Blizzard was already so much successful, so it's very difficult because what you can apply to a big company cannot cannot be applied to any other company. You cannot consider like what, for example, what Blizzard or Riot Games are doing with their event. Other companies cannot do that, and each company is extremely different in terms of culture. I'm not sure that there is right or wrong. If you remember when there was the E3, I think that basically Rockstar was never there. So it's like, and most of the time Blizzard was not there either. So Riot Game was not part of E3. So it's everyone is communicating differently to its fan base and to its community. So you need to find your way, and basically what is the best way to communicate, and especially now with the remote and the end of history and everything, this kind of big events, things have changed also. So you need to be flexible in the way you communicate.
fair. So you left Blizzard and then became a consultant. Could you tell us about that? Like why the pivot to consultant? What happened there?
No, it was more like at that time I was headhunted by Bethesda, but I was acting as basically the advisor of the SVP over there, and that's why I was mentioning it as a consultant, basically because that was a good entry to explain what I was doing. Bethesda is a completely different animal company compared to Blizzard. it was at least at that time before Microsoft was acquiring them. It was a private company, private-owned company, and with a very unique characteristic. But I will say this is the center, the core of their business is PC. Even if they are releasing Elder Scroll, they are releasing Fallout on console, the heart of the people is always PC. They are like it's game made for the modders basically. This is what they are building. They're kind of huge universe. They will take their time. And when I joined Bethesda, it was just after they had a massive success with Fallout Shelter. So Fallout Shelter was the mobile version of as a Fallout, but when you know the story, it's super interesting. Is Fallout Shelter was just a marketing tool to promote Fallout 4.
No way.
Yeah, basically it was asked. It was even not done internally. It was done with an outsourcing company, and basically this game became number one in US on the App Store right away, the first day. Fallout Shelter was a massive success, and it was not planned that way. I remember that after a while they were saying that it was generating more than $100 million for a marketing tool that was not supposed to make money. You know that it happens that way. So what happened exactly is that Bethesda they said, wow, it seems that there is a market that no one ever told us before. It's called the mobile market. Maybe we should do something with that. And they decided to do mobile business. And they needed to find people, and everyone is PC oriented or console oriented within the company. There was no mobile department, division, or anything like that. So they needed to bring people, and this is where they thought about me. Okay, we need someone who knows about the mobile game industry, especially in Japan, in Asia, and that's why there was the position to basically to develop and to advise how to develop the strategy and the business around the mobile starting from Asia. There was some few projects that were made in US, but basically they were made by BGS, so Bethesda Game Studio. But it was for them always something, I would say, on the side of the big one, the big title. You know, there was already so many games that were developed. You know, there was all the Elder Scroll, and it was already they have bigger things to take care of, basically.
So that was a change for you in the sense of was it a consultant in just the name, or were you in more of a consultant position?
It was more like advisor position.
How did you find the change, like being an advisor? Because that, from my understanding, was the first time.
So for me, it was inside the company, it was extremely difficult, and this is also, I think, growing pains. It's like you have a little bit the feeling that you are starting from the beginning, and I love to build business myself. I love to create companies. I love to leverage business. It's completely different. It's a different spirit. But the problem is that I didn't have any counterpart within the company at that time. And everyone was taking care of PC and everyone was taking care of console business. So they have Doom, they have maybe 10 or 15 studios worldwide. And myself, I was, in fact, I'm saying Bethesda so everyone can understand, but on my contract, legally speaking, it was ZeniMax in Japan. ZeniMax was the holding company of Bethesda. And Bethesda is the name that everyone is using, because if I say ZeniMax, you say, what is ZeniMax? Well, the company who is doing all the game that you like, but you don't know it. And this is more a holding. So that's why I say Bethesda. And but I was based in Tokyo with the Tango Gameworks, Shinji Mikami studio. So we are all together. But unfortunately, it was not that long because they were running some issues with Fallout 76 at that time. So they were just releasing the game, and it was full of bugs. The community management, it was not doing well. It was going on the downside. They couldn't fix it, and the launch campaign was a little bit horrible. So basically, they took the decision to stop everything that was mobile. They just wanted to kind of simplify their operation. They say like, we understand that mobile is important, but we have uh, bigger things to manage right now. So we prefer to stop this business. And in fact, this is what they have done. And it's always a little bit sorry for them because they have such fantastic IPs, and you are just wondering why they are not doing more. So there was one project at that time that was like based on the Elder Scroll license that was called Blade. It was a kind of Elder Scroll on mobile. The difference is that it was made by BGS, and BGS is a very unique studio within ZeniMax. Is basically Todd Awards can do whatever he wants. So it's a completely different story. But they stop it. But I think that one day, I think that Bethesda should come back to the mobile game, and they should go full speed. And maybe it will happen. Now it's Microsoft, and they have this holistic vision, and it's at the end there was Activision acquiring Blizzard, Activision acquiring King, Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard King, and now it's everything is under Microsoft. So Microsoft know what they want to do. They want to sell subscription to the Game Pass. They want to keep the people engaged. So probably mobile will be a very very big piece probably. So we will see what will happen in the future.
Yeah, loads of different changes, especially after that $100 million on the Fallout shelter as an accident. Like they're they're sitting, might be sitting on a gold mine there. I want to just touch on this one more time, the advising part. Like because you've moved into that consultant role, I know it was a short period of time, but what did you learn becoming an advisor? If someone else was advising other studios, like what does a good advisor do?
I think that what is important is to keep a very good connection with the person you are working with. You need to have a constant contact, and you need to feed information constantly. And basically, you need also to get information. So, myself, I was in Japan, but with more time, I think that what is important, let's say that you are not in the same country, is that you are visiting people frequently so you can engage the conversation. You can discuss also with the different studios in what they want to do. Like, you everyone remembers Doom. So why there is no Doom on mobile, right? It's a little bit too bad. So these kind of things. There are so many ideas, and the ideas can come only through discussion, through conversation. So you need to engage with that, and basically you need to make yourself relevant and visible internally. Especially bigger is the group. It's becoming more difficult when you have thousands of people. So I think this is something very, very important. Good communication, make you visible, and show also that you have a lot of ideas.
Lovely. Being visible, increasing the conversations, like more contact, not less.
Yeah, yeah. And also that you need to make when you are an advisor, you need to make the companies understand that advisor is not like someone you can just ask, oh, I have a question, what is the solution? It's much more, an advisor is someone that is giving you guidance based on its own experience and its skills and background, but this is also someone that is here to challenge you. It's like the mentor for the business, if you want. And this is the value that you are bringing. But if you believe that, oh, I had like 3 problems today, I call my advisor, he fixed like 2 of them, that's good, I can stop. No. Every day there are new issues, new problem, new discussion, new topics, and new challenges. And basically, it should be an ongoing and long-term relationship and discussion. I recommend companies to use advisor to have different point of view, to be challenged in what they think, because especially in the big companies, there is a lot of politics, and not everyone can say whatever they want. So when you bring someone externally, in that case, I think that's a very good point, because this person can bring you its expertise, but there is no bias, there is no politics. It's someone from outside. So you can listen or not listen, but at least you will have a very objective opinion about the situation of your company or what you should do. Then, after, you decide how you want to manage it. But I think that one of the problems of today's company is the politics. That's one. Two is a kind of the management that is a little bit tricky, because people are trying, some of them, because of the politics, to influence their career to be more short-term oriented, and the company is long-term oriented. So companies need to see the advisor as a long-term partner to benefit them and to protect the interest of the company. I think that's the best way to show it.
Yeah. Evolution, this was a very common thing because we only did contract recruitment, and especially when it was like an executive producer role, it felt more of like the advisor, because they would come in and be like, well, this is broken, we're missing a few people here, and that conversation wouldn't have happened if they didn't bring in the outside help. And this is someone you're paying for outside experience, and that dynamic, because they're not an employee and they're not worried about quote unquote being fired because this is why you brought me here, if you haven't had that for like 3-5 years, it's a massive change. And I think what you said, especially when you're very big and the politics kind of pile up, so to speak, it's nice to have someone jump in who's like, whoa, what about this, this, and this? You're like, oh, I haven't thought about that before. Like, yeah, because like you said, people aren't bringing it up because whatever reason, they might not have that. Might not feel the support to bring up issues all the time or what have you. Like having that outside help, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah, it's having a fresh eyes, basically. But yeah, you know also that when I was telling you before that there is a kind of lack of maturity of the gaming industry, this is something that you can see here. Is the companies just believe in themselves, in what they are doing, and each company believes that what they are doing is right. So I would like to know, how is that possible that the big ones, the gigantic ones, like the biggest brand, like Disney, like Coca-Cola, whoever you want, Exxon, how is that possible that all these companies are using like um, consulting companies like McKinsey, Ernst and Young, etc., etc.? How they are asking for some help with dozens of thousands of people internally, of managers, but they are still asking some different opinion, or their boards are always made of people coming from different industry. But in the gaming industry, it works like a kind of very small vacuum of people that are just staying together in a room and discussing, and they basically they agree to agree with each other. There is no one agreeing to disagree, and I think it's a kind of a tendency right now, and that's why it's creating multiple issues right now in the gaming industry. One of them being the lack of risk that the big publishers are taking, and the second one is the wrong management of the people, bringing so many layoffs recently.
Like as a recent example in my world of like LinkedIn and content marketing, like Microsoft themselves pay for LinkedIn coaches and support on how to use LinkedIn better for their sales team, even though Microsoft owns LinkedIn. So if they're paying for outside help for help of one of their products, then kind of if you're a smaller company, having outside help is never a bad idea. Like having that extra third eye or just an extra pair of eyes, I think it can't be overstated how much of an impact it makes. Because if Microsoft is doing it when they own the product, then you can only imagine the things that you're potentially missing by, like you said, just staying in your garden and not kind of seeing what's out there, what's happening at other studios. Ooh, one thing I forgot to ask you. You changed it at Blizzard from a function focused to a franchise focused structure. Could you quickly elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so basically, when you arrive in a company, you always believe that things will be like just like a routine of management, but there is always something boiling, I would say, on the background. And here it was basically the change of organization of Blizzard. So the company was function based, and that means that basically there was the marketing, the PR, the communication, the operation being the PC cafe, the esports, the online, etc., etc. And then basically there was the decision. There was at that time there was the Overwatch League. There was the decision that it would be much more better if the company internally was organized around franchise, and that each franchise is becoming in a way its own mini company. It's like each franchise needs to be responsible of its own P&L, need also to do what is correct for them, and not basically to be mixed with other, because there is no point of communication. So of course it's just a different way to look at things, but the process was pretty long. With my boss we took more than 6 months to do it, because Blizzard always want to do things the most correct way as possible, especially due to in respect to their employees. It's very, very important. So they want to be very, very careful. So it took 6 months, and it was a very big organization, because some people, like for example, PR and communication was a big group. I think there was like 30 people. And if you break that basically into small pieces, well, basically there is the feeling that the person who was in charge of the division didn't have like 30% under their responsibility anymore. It was like PR, one community manager going to Overwatch, one PR, one community manager going to World of Warcraft, etc., etc., etc. So it's changing a lot, I would say, especially for the reporting and for the managers. This is where it can create a lot of conflicts, depending, of course, who wants to have Overwatch, who wants to have Diablo, who wants. So, it's more like it's becoming okay, you need to be professional in the way that you are handling that. But you know also that there are some people who have a kind of affect for certain IPs, certain franchise.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of change, but on paper, so that was a good idea on paper, but after everything has happened, was it a good decision? Like, should other studios look to do that as well?
Um, I I would say I don't think so. I don't think so.
Interesting.
It can be done. Um, you can, if you want, you can break out the main IP that you have. If you have a very like an IP that is overshining the rest, and you can pull it apart. I think this is completely fair. I will say like the case of League of Legends for Riot Games, and I will say basically that let's say Call of Duty for Activision. But for Activision, the Spyro or a Crash Bandicoot is not the same size of Call of Duty, right? So basically, when you are starting to say, okay, we create a franchise-based department organization, but then you have a franchise that is doing, let's say, $2 billion and another one that is doing $100 million. Do you want to keep exactly the same organization? Does it make sense? In that case, maybe it's better to have different, I will say, different groups, like the main one is a part and the rest you put it on the side. I think it would be easier to manage. In the case of Blizzard, that was complicated because they had 6 franchises and all of them were super relevant. They were built in a 30 years time history. But you know that at that time there was Overwatch League, but then after it was abandoned because it was not successful. And you know that today Overwatch is not as successful as it was before. They were announcing Overwatch 2, and it has been very, very complicated since the beginning. So not everything is on par.
So function focused. If you get a very big success where it's kind of overshadowing things, then try to separate it. But you want to treat that with respect when it comes to separating from function to franchise, because it's not, I guess, efficient. Is that what I'm getting at?
Yeah, and it's not efficient and it's not really relevant. But let's say, for example, in the case of, for example, Activision. So right now it's Microsoft owning everything. Okay, they own everything. But if you want basically to treat all the IPs exactly the same way, well, you will have a lot of problem internally to manage that. Because there will be some people telling you, how is it possible that basically we are treated the same way, considering we are doing 10 times or 100 times more money? Recently in the Game Pass, the first game coming from Blizzard was basically Diablo, right? It was Diablo 4. Okay, how the decision was taken, who was in charge of taking this decision, why Diablo, why not Overwatch, how was it made? That's internally, it's more complicated. It's either like, is it the beginning or is like why Diablo was chosen? Is it relevant for Diablo? You know, it's a little bit complicated to know about that. Um, but you want to be, of course, you want to offer the best to the players, but you should be always extremely respectful to the developers, to the development team. That is super important, and I will say for the best of the best, you have to be even more careful than careful. It's like in in Blizzard, that was always like the respect for the developers was always so high. I really hope that Microsoft will be able to keep that and to really nurture and to protect that because uh, they are gigantic projects. So you just cannot kill the games like that, and it's not a good way to manage things.
No, I couldn't agree more. I love Overwatch, and yeah, Overwatch 2 was quite sad when they cancelled it. Kind of felt unceremoniously as well. Like they could have done it with a bit more.
The main reason is because the way that Overwatch was created was never like to. I put that into a big bracket, okay, to milk the players. It was always like based on a lot of basically lot of respect for the players, and they didn't want to make it a kind of mobile type of game where you need to constantly buy the new characters. Like everything was for free, but basically you can buy uh, some I don't know skins of the characters, these kind of things. And the skins of the characters are extremely important in Korea because they like to show themselves. Again, it depends on the culture, but I think that the way that when the game was selling so well at the beginning of Overwatch, everyone was super happy, and that was fantastic. But then after it reached a peak, so in the business, it's always like, what about next year? What about next year? And what about next year? And the business model was never a free-to-play game. It was not like that. If you compare with League of Legends, you can play for free. You just buy the cosmetics because you love the game, and in that way it was very well made. So because you needed to pay for Overwatch, that was a very very big blocker. I never considered it was a blocker myself, but once I was visiting my family, and there was the son of someone in the family. The guy was 14 years old, and I said that I was working in Blizzard and blah 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 Overwatch. And I told him, "Are you playing it?" I said, "No." I said, "How is that possible?" And he said, "Basically, I'm playing League of Legends." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because it's free." So there is also a generation thing that new generation, they prefer to play for free and to enjoy game for free. They want something very easy to enter. You need to remove all the different constraints and barrier to enter the game. That's something that is very important right now. That's why the mobile industry is going so fast, and that's why there is so many. The free to play is the leading business model right now.
Yeah, I think especially for the long term, because Overwatch is free now, you can play it, but that person didn't start playing Overwatch because it wasn't free when he tried to play it. So he probably started on League of Legends. Then I have that. Like I played Hearthstone for free, but now that I'm an adult, they're milking me dry. But I played it for free for like 8 years. But now I'm like, oh, yeah, just take my money because I've built the 8 years of history and collection. And I can imagine it's the same thing with League of Legends, right? Like you build that, but he didn't get to have that experience with Overwatch because it wasn't free at the start. So yeah, it's an interesting point.
Exactly, and I think that was the point of Overwatch 2. It was to remove all the constraints for the players at the beginning.
Alrighty. So on the final stage of this podcast, I'd love to dive straight in because you have your experience at Huuuge Games and Storytel. So that is again massive changes. Like I had a question here. I wonder if we can do these rapid fire, Alexis. So from Huuuge Games, you put on your LinkedIn that you changed the production cycle from 2 years to 4 months. How?
Huge Game is basically a very different companies to proceed. It's very iterative process and doing a lot of basically prototyping, and that was extremely important. And then after there is the way to work with the reskin. So I had two projects when I was in Huge, and one was working on a game called Troll that was a universal license based game on mobile, and the other one we were just reskinning this game but creating 3D, but basically working super fast. And I think in that one, in a nutshell, is because we had more limited team, and basically everyone knew exactly what they had to accomplish, and they had a lot of flexibility. And one thing that I was not telling you is, in fact, when I moved to Germany, basically I was recruited by a mobile startup that was called Treasure Hunt. And I simplify a little bit my LinkedIn. As I was telling you, my life is very complicated, very long, very complicated. And basically, as soon as I arrive, the company was acquired by Huge Games. And that's why I say I simplified it. So this company was working on the Trolls game for years. And basically, when I arrived as a CEO. Then, after the acquisition of Huge, I became the general manager of the Berlin studio. So basically, the first thing that was very important for me, and especially when you are in charge of the studio, is to put some deadline, some hard deadline. It's like you need to release this game. There was the movie that was supposed to be released in April. At the end of the day, it was released, but on VOD because of the COVID. All the theater were closed and everything. So that was the first movie worldwide to be released during the COVID like that in VOD. But it was very, very complicated. There was other issues, but basically having some hard deadline, having some very clear milestone, even if you are an agile environment, you need to work fast. I think also that when you are working in a smaller company, in smaller startup, what I have seen before, I'm not saying this is not correct, but I'm saying this is dangerous for the startups and for the smaller developers and publishers. There is, in a way, the love of the perfection. The small companies always want to do something that will be outstanding on the market, but they do not understand. Again, this is where they will need to get some strategic advisors, some guidance. They do not understand that they are not Blizzard and they are not Riot Games. They are not making billions of dollars. So basically, there is a tendency that when they are funded and when they are raising money, whatever it is, 10 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 millions, they will recruit massively. And basically, they will increase their run rate like crazy. And they will always try to make it look better and better and better and better. And I have seen so many people in the startups that are never releasing their project. Never. It's like it's always ongoing. It's never to be released. Like they are afraid to disappoint or whatever. I think that on contrary is basically you should release your product. It should be in an iterative way, and you should be after improving based on the KPIs, based on your data analytics, based on the community management. You should improve your game and your experience progressively like that. And you can build. Of course, there will be some company who say the KPIs are not good enough. We just remove the game. It can happen. But if it is your own company, You manage your own destiny, and you should not be afraid of releasing your game. On contrary, you should release it even if it's not perfect.
So this is a good segue to your consulting. So could you tell me what led to the setting up of Ace Consulting Group, and what is it that you do there?
Yes, and so basically after Huuuge, I was recruited by Storytel, and Storytel was absolutely not based on the game industry. It's an audiobook company based in Stockholm. It's a Swedish company, and myself, I said, okay, I always consider that my skills is, yes, I love games. I have worked in the game industry forever, but basically my skills is management, team leadership, and this is and I have a very international profile. So basically, that was fitting, and I said, if I can work in the game industry, I can work in IT. And this is what I was doing there. It was working very well. Eventually, there was a change of management, and with this change of management, there was a change of team. The new CEO arrived with its own team, and basically, we decided to part away. From that, myself, I said, okay, now that I'm basically kind of free, I can do whatever I want in my life. What should I, what do I want to do? What should I do? And basically, it was like, okay, I miss the game industry. I want to go back in it, but I want to go back in it in a different way. I will never basically reject working for a company because I think I love to work with teams. I love to work with people. But I think that what's happened to me is that it opened the full perspective that, yeah, you can create your own business, and basically you can come back to the industry in a different way. And how could I benefit uh, the most companies as possible with my knowledge, my expertise, my background? And basically, I think that at that time, creating Ace Consulting Group was basically a good way of doing that. And it was like, okay, now I can offer my services to everyone. It's never the question of big versus small, publisher versus developers. It's basically helping the companies who need to get some guidance and to help the individuals who need some coaching. And again, the coaching is coming from the experience. There are many coach right now you can see on LinkedIn, since you are the pro of it, but many young people and who are lacking experience. So for me, it was really like, how can I help the companies and help the people the most to basically become good managers and manage their company properly. So that's why I have different vertical. One is basically advisory, and so this is strategic advisor for the developer, for the publishers, but I want also to be a strategic advisor for the board of directors, for the top management team, for the executive who need some guidance, a different point of view, wants to be challenged, and we are blocked in a situation. The coaching is a little bit the same way, but much more personal. Many companies are offering some benefit, for example, to their employees, and I think that what they should what they should invest is not only on the coffee machine or on the ping pong table or something like that. What is the most relevant for the people is themselves. You should capitalize on the people. And I remember what I learned when I was in Blizzard is that Blizzard was investing so much into training, into coaching. Myself, I was managing director. I had my personal coach, and basically, also we were receiving coaches constantly, either from outsource, either from the HQ. And basically, we were constantly trained. And I think this is extremely important, especially because you can fix so many issues that way. You can make overall the industry more mature. You can help people to fix their, let's say, their professional issues that they are facing with the other department, the other division. You can give a different opinion. And then also there is, for people, for example, so many people today have been laid off, and it would be good for them to use some coach basically for, I would say, the career management. That's extremely important. I think that generally speaking, people are not investing enough on themselves. Everyone is spending money on everything. So let's go on vacation. Let's go on whatever. Like, let's buy a lot of shit and everywhere. But basically, people don't invest in themselves. So they should be very careful about that and very aware. It's like you want to take care of your health. You need to eat healthy. Basically, you should sleep well. You should find a way to sleep well. You should do some sports activity for the long term. But then after is also, what are you doing for your career? You are working 8 hours at minimum, 8 hours a day. So what are you doing for yourself? There is the personal and there is the professional. If you are not taking yourself seriously, why do you think other people will take you seriously? And for me, the point is always to help everyone. That's why I wanted to do two things, mainly with ACE Consulting Group. One, I wanted to be sure that there is people do not feel that there is a trap or whatever. So I put all the prices on the website. There is nothing that is hidden, so they cannot say, "Well, there is a." It will make me click on it, and then after I will have to pay. No, you don't. It's basically everything is crystal clear. You know where you stand, what you would be interested in or not. The second thing is that I'm always offering like 1 hour free consultancy. Either it can be for the companies to understand their project, what they are trying to do in terms of advisory, in terms of decision making, or for the personal, for the individuals. Basically, if you have an issue, you can come at me, and basically you will have a voice that you can talk to. Then there is no string attached. There is nothing like that. So it's really about how can you contribute, and probably this is exactly the same for your business, Harry. Is how can you contribute to the industry? How can you help the other people? And I just think that right now we are in interesting stage where people, I see more and more, for example, on LinkedIn, people who are a little bit lost right now in this career transition. Is like, what should I do? I lost my job. I cannot find a new job. What are my different options? And people don't know what to do, basically. So you will see, of course, and this is always very nice, people saying this company is recruiting, this company is recruiting, but it's not really solving the issue. It's just pointing someone to apply somewhere else, and maybe the problem will repeat itself in 6 months time. People should open their perspective and should become more confident, and this is basically the job of a coach to do that. As for the companies, I think that so many companies, and especially the developers, they do not know how to structure themselves. They do not know how to organize, especially when this is a startup. They do not know how they should manage the people, how they should recruit. They do not know how they should manage their finance, or basically how they should make a deal with a publisher. So they need to have many guidance, what kind of game and how do you work with the best. And to reply to all these questions, instead of trying by yourself, people should take basically the use of always ringing the bell to ask someone, an expert, to help them. Because if they do that, they will see that suddenly things will improve. And either people are afraid, either it's a kind of lack of awareness about their own situation. They believe they will extract themselves from their own situation just as it was before, but it will never be like that. And that's why you have so many studios that are laying off people right now, because there is a kind of credit crunch and everyone is suffering from it. So that's the problem. Or it was too much, too big, high run rate, and they don't know how to deal with that. So that's kind of the problem that they are facing. Many companies interested in my advisory service, they are coming when there is a big crisis. Well, it would have been great for the company to use strategic advisor when everything was going well. So basically, they could really take the right decision at the right time. And now it's much more like trying to save the company, or what should we do, or we have this kind of crisis, or this kind of problem to solve. How do we deal with that? Of course, advisor is here to help you, but the advisor doesn't have the whole situation. We cannot deal with everything. We do the most that we can. Faster we enter, and more we are working in a long-term relationship, easier it will be to manage and to take the right decision day after day. And I think this is what is important.
And I want to double click on the coaching before you need it. I took on coaching because I went from a 360 recruiter only doing Unity development, and I was kind of doing that for a good 2 years. And then I pivoted to doing just business development using LinkedIn. And I took coaching then on kind of how to get better at LinkedIn. And as I did the coaching, it just started to open my eyes on like my personal career as well. Like I started getting skills, and it was a matter of I didn't know what I didn't know. So once I started building those skills, you start to see different opportunities. And then I started speaking to more and more people. They said, "No, you should potentially charge for this." I was like, I never would have thought about doing that. And it was this wouldn't have happened if I didn't start the coaching. And I think this example works really well with the gaming studios or the person like who's been laid off potentially. It's like having that person to talk to, it just unlocks a whole new world, I feel, because you have that person with the perspective. And also, if you can meet with potentially people in your similar situation and just have those conversations more frequently, especially in a remote world, I always advocate for networking on LinkedIn. That's what it's for. And the more conversations you have, it's just really hammering home that you don't know what you don't know. So you need to have those conversations to fill in those gaps because, like you said, when that person was doing that studio had that crisis, if they had that chat 6 months ago, they probably could have saved months of time and probably even more benefit than when the benefit they got when they got the crisis. So yeah, definitely doing it sooner rather than later. I'm curious, Alexis, when you have the people coming to you for help, what do they usually come for? What's the most common thing?
I will reply to you, but just before, because there are so many things to reply to what you just said. And first thing is that, isn't it funny that usually we are not aware about ourselves? We do not know what we don't know. And basically we have this tendency to believe that we know very well ourselves, but we cannot see ourselves. So the external eyes, someone that you are asking for some help, can see things in you that you can never see. And basically you will discover so many things about you. And this is something that is very true. Then it's not only for, let's say, because you are 20 or 25. This is true in all the different stages in life. And of course, this is something that should be repeated. And the second thing, again, is that people are afraid in investing in themselves, and this attitude needs to be changed. Because I remember, I think it was like close to 10 years ago, basically, I decided to take a class of meditation, and it was kind of expensive, but I will say that it's for life, and it completely changed my life. Completely changed my life, my perspective in life, and I could say probably that it has saved me from, when you have always the stress that is piling, and this kind of thing. So I it was one of the first time I was investing in myself. I could really see the benefit. Of course, there are different ways because I was always kind of doing some sports and these kind of things. But basically, if you are doing with sports, why you are not doing for here for the mental? Why you are you? I think that I would recommend to everyone, if you are afraid to use coach, start with meditation. Start with something that is a little bit on the side. You can have myself. I know that personality wise people are complicated, and many of the things can be a mix. In my services, I have professional coaching, which is much more for business issues that people are facing within their company, within their studio. But then after, I have career coaching, which is especially important when you are doing a transition. And then after, there is personal coaching. And sometimes the things can mix together. There is someone in a bad position who would like to change his life, and it's becoming personal. So yes, there is a distinction, but basically people are more complicated. It's not just like one thing. So I really recommend everyone to try to invest more and more into themselves, and they will really see the benefit 1000% sure. It is better to invest in a coach, or to invest in a meditation program, in a training program, to invest in yourself, than to invest in, I don't know, stuff. It's basically like buying some stuff. It will not, you will not keep it with you. It will not make you grow, and that would be a mistake. So yeah. Sorry, what was your question?
No, it's all good. I think that covers it. That's good. What I would love to end on, Alexis, I think would be really cool, is you did a post today on LinkedIn, and I really liked the fact that it's basically a list of a lot of things people should do to build a stellar team. So I would love to rapid fire read the headlines and you just explain these key aspects. That okay? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure, sure.
So key aspects to consider for a stellar team. Skill fit. What do you mean by that quickly?
Well, basically, there is the culture of the company, and there is basically what you are doing. It's always the hard skill and soft skill, and the skill are always very important, but you need to be sure that they can be reused in the team. So basically, you need to be sure that what you are recruiting the person is what you will ask. There are so many cases where basically people are recruited, and when they arrive, someone is asking them to do something completely different from what they were recruited. So there is like, you need to have the culture fit, of course, but you need to, of course, in terms of skills, you need to have a very good fit depending on what you want for your company. This is what I would mean.
Yeah. And if I'd add a personal thing, I've found it many times when the agency is trying to recruit for a role, and there's sometimes some hesitation from the hiring manager or the studio to hop on a call to give a full specification. When that doesn't happen, this risk goes up through the roof. This was because if you wanted a Unity developer, sure, but what problem is the person going to be solving? Oh, okay, well, there's a fraction of Unity developers who can actually do that. You don't want a Unity developer. You need someone who's worked on this at this type of studio, which is a lot more specific. And I think that's a very big thing that people should remember when it comes to hiring, is just really doubling down on the problem rather than the skills that they need.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's always very important for the recruiter basically to work with the team, with the hiring team, to understand exactly what is their need. So basically, they will be able to create the strong job description, and basically there will be less problem afterward. It's like that's something very important. But also, you need to be clear with the candidates is basically where the company is at. You know, if you know that a project will be can, and basically there will be a new project, you will be more careful in the way to explain the situation. So people do not feel when they arrive in a company that they are like, oh, I was working, I was doing this job, and now I have to do something completely different. That's not why I was recruited. So I think that if the companies are not sure, they should pause for a while. It will be better.
Very good point. Attitude and work ethic. Quickly on that. Why is attitude and work ethic so important?
Well, because the I will say that we are living. I mean, at least that's my opinion. We are living by our values and our moral. And basically, I think that many people are, of course, will go around and will say yes, but maybe my values and my moral are not the same as you, etc. But we need to find a common ground. And you know, like when I was in Blizzard, there was 8 values, 8 core values. And basically, I think it's very good for the company to have values. So basically, people who enter the company will understand exactly what is the vision, what is the values of the company, and then to understand also the manager that there are some things that are acceptable and some things that are not acceptable. The attitude is kind of everything. You cannot you cannot act the way that you want. You need to act professionally, and basically, there is a kind of it, it should be the same for everyone because we are working as a team and we should all respect each other. So the attitude is something that is extremely important. Usually what we are saying is that for the hard skill, if someone doesn't have the hard skill, you can train the person to get the hard skill. But the attitude is based on the education and the way they were raised. So if they do not have a good attitude, you cannot keep them. That's I think that would be the problem.
So priority number one, attitude, and then only then you kind of start evaluating everything else.
You need to understand if people are, for example, genuinely interested in the project, if they are genuinely interested in succeeding or to make the company a success or to make the project successful. I think that's the basic. Let's say that you have some candidates who do not know about your company. They were not doing their own homework. They do not know about your product. So that means they have no interest. Already that's kind of problem of attitude because it's showing that they are taking everything for granted. And you should never take everything for granted. Basically, you should understand again that what is your position, that's your role. Basically, if you are not interested, don't show yourself. And if you are showing yourself, show that you are really committed to this company, to the project, and you want to make it successful. And then after, yes, likability is like, yeah, you do not have to smile, but life is so much better if you smile, right? So
Exactly.
so that's kind of things that are important, I think.
Alrighty. Number three, growth potential. What does that mean?
Growth potential is basically you do not want to have someone, either for the person or for the company, that will just stay where they are. You want to have someone, again, for the long term and someone that you can grow internally into the role, into the position. I think that as a manager, as a general manager, managing director, one of the things that I like the most is when I'm giving new responsibilities to people, when you are basically promoting someone. This is so great because there is the satisfaction, of course, of the person receiving, but also you are very proud that the person was moving step by step and moving forward, and that's very good. And the fact also that you want people to, especially the good people, you want them to stick with you. You want to be a very good team, and I think that's extremely important.
Couldn't agree more. Diversity of thought.
This is a kind of a trendy topic right now, but very very important. Yes, is basically one of the things is that if you are just agreeing with yourself, that's not that very complicated, and it's much more like a kind of dictatorship. And basically, if you want to create something new, well, you should have people coming from different background. Right now, there is a many discussion about different gender, etc., and that's extremely important to have diversity. That's not for nothing that we are saying diversity and inclusion. It's basically to enrich the game, to enrich the gameplay, to have new ideas because people are coming from different backgrounds. I think this is what makes life very very rich. Myself, I never had this problem because I was always very international. I was born in France. I made When I was a kid, I stayed 4 years in Africa, and then after I came back to France, and then after I went to Japan, to Korea, to Japan, to Germany, etc. So I have I have moved a lot. I was also in charge of international. So I always worked with people with different culture, different languages, different background. And basically, that was one of the things that I am the proudest. And also, this is something that I enjoy the most. Is for me, just being with the same people is not that interesting. But if you can interact with people from different origins, from different culture, from different languages, nationalities, gender, etc., this is so great. This is so great because it's enriching you, and basically it will make better product at the end.
Everybody wins, I feel.
Everybody wins. That should be the motto. But it's also, even if you want to rationalize it for people who do not want to understand, that's very simple. Today, the world we are living in is completely international. Like 25 years ago, internet was just starting. Like if you remember, iPhone was arrived in 2009. It's not that long ago. So basically, the world has so much changed since the internet, beginning of the 2000, end of the 90s, since the mobile arrived, especially the iPhone that changed everything because it's basically a computer in the palm of your hand. Everything has changed. So now it's everything is international. So it's not the same world we were living in, and basically we need to be aware of it and basically to walk that way. That's just the way it is, and it's better.
Perfect. Alignment with vision. Can you explain alignment with vision?
I was touching it a little bit before, when I was telling you about the fact that Blizzard had some core values. But basically, there is always, for the company, or there should be always, a vision. It's like, what do you want to achieve as a company? What is the vision? And it can be, of course, the vision of the company, like making the greatest game in the world. This is kind of the easy one that everyone will do. But at the end of the day, is that this is also the role of the different executive, of the top management, to convey the vision. And basically, you need to get everyone on board. That's one of the most complicated job from the team leaders, from the managers, is to onboard everyone into the vision and to say, okay, we were telling you that we were doing this product and now with this business model, and now we are shifting the business model. So there is a lot of education, and basically you need to bring people to the new vision. Coming back to the discussion we were having, moving Blizzard from the function type organization to the franchise organization, this is basically a different vision in terms of management of the company. So you need basically to onboard people, and that's why it was taking 6 months, because we needed to build and to consider all the different elements. So we were sure that we were treating everyone with respect. That was something very, very important. So the point is not to force the vision of the company. The point is to explain, to educate people. So basically, they will accept, they will approve, and they will be aligned with you. And when people are aligned with your vision, they will work by themselves. There is no fight. And that's the point, to be aligned.
I see this a lot when I was doing recruitment for gaming studios. This misalignment of vision was the main reason seniors quit. The internal vision, like they weren't learning anymore, they didn't see the growth, they either didn't believe in the company. That was the thing that led them to quit. It wasn't necessarily the money. And when I speak to the people, it feels like it was an avoidable thing. So having that one-to-one attention with the manager and aligning the vision with the employees consciously, having that as a constant kind of battle, because it's not going to happen by accident. You need to keep working on it. So I think that's a big place where gaming studios can really kind of hone in on, like aligning the vision.
Yeah, and you said it is basically it's kind of a problem for me of management. I think that today many companies are failing because of bad management. It's basically not everyone will agree with what the company is doing with the decision making. But the problem is not agreeing or not agreeing. is basically if people do not agree, is that most of the time, either you are not making the right decision, so you should have maybe some advisors to help you, to guide you. Second one is basically you are not explaining well enough to your team. So you need to take time and you need to show that what you are doing for the company is for the good of the company, and the good of the company will bring the good for the employees. This is something that you need to take time. You need to be very diligent in your work and do it not like so much like, how to say, brutal. You know what's happening since the beginning of the year with basically 10,000 people that have been fired has been extremely brutal. That's not normal. This is bad management. It could have been prevented if they were not recruiting the way they were doing and they were not reacting. If they were proactive in the way that they are building their company, it will never happen.
Just preach. Just yes. Alrighty. We'll leave that there. Alexis, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care.